Welcome to GuerrillaPreneur, the Art of Waging Small Business Warfare podcast, teaching Davids how to defeat Goliaths. Now here's your host, Mark Anthony Peterson.
Welcome back to the podcast for entrepreneurs, startups, and business mavericks. If you're not a maverick, you don't have to go home, but you gotta get up out of this podcast. In this podcast, we teach entrepreneurs how to defeat the corporate giant. Just like in the story of David and Goliath, David defeated a much taller and stronger Goliath not by fighting the giant in hand-to-hand combat, but by using technology, a slingshot. The slingshot allowed the smaller David to attack from a distance that minimized the advantages that Goliath had over the smaller David. My name is Mark Anthony Peterson. I'm a serial entrepreneur, a futurist, and the managing executive at Serial Consulting, a leading small business strategy and technology consulting firm. I'm also the author of the book, GuerrillaPreneur, Small Business Strategy for Davids Wanting to Defeat Goliaths, which is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and iTunes. This podcast is brought to you by Serial Consulting. An idea can launch a business. A strategy can take it global. Guerrillapreneurs, this is our 30th episode. There are people out there that didn't think we'd make it to 12. They thought we would quit and have to make a comeback. But here's what I have to say to those folks. Don't call it a comeback. I've been here for 30 episodes, spitting fire at guerrillapreneurs and watching their businesses explode. Two dope girls, too good cocoa. The sharing economy is going to rule the world, and that's not loco. The next 30 episodes are going to be lit. If you're an entrepreneur, listen in, build your businesses, and never quit. If you're a guerrillapreneur, you've already caught the early worm. Disruptive technology, outsourcing, cult branding. If you don't know, you better learn. Mavericks, the real top guns, listen to this show everywhere. And Goliath, we're coming for you. GuerrillaPreneur, the art of waging small business warfare. Guys, thank you for being a part of the tribe for the last 30 episodes. Thank you for being here with me as we build this movement and show entrepreneurs everywhere that you can level the playing field and take on the corporate giant using the sharing and gig economy as the principles for designing your business. Today, we're taking another step. We're talking about saving the planet by being GuerrillaGreen, while also creating new revenue streams. In today's show, I asked the question, what if your company were GuerrillaGreen? GuerrillaGreen. What I'm implying with that is, what if you built your company to be sustainable from day one? With zero waste, where all resources are reused, just like in nature where all resources are recycled. And because you're GuerrillaGreen, you're reusing some of those byproducts or that waste to create new revenue streams. The old saying goes, one man's trash is another man's treasure. Guerrillapreneurs take their products, trash or waste, and turn that into treasure. I start with the premise that every company should be accountable for the resources that they use to create a product and to make that product as safe as it can be for the consumer, and to also be accountable for the waste associated with the manufacturing of that product or service. And then at end of life, when that consumer completes use of that product or the product is no longer functional, the company takes accountability for the disposal and recycling of the resources used to manufacture it. Now, what if the world operated under those boundaries? Would that restrain business? Or for guerrillapreneurs, would it create new revenue streams? As U.S. business people, we've never had constraints like this. We have enough land in this country where people can build 4,000 square foot homes and then turn around and rent a storage unit to put all the stuff that won't fit in that 4,000 square foot home in that storage unit. And we've taken the same approach to managing our businesses. Any resources that were left over after the creation of a product have typically been looked at as waste and not as a potential byproduct that could generate additional revenue for the company that created its primary product. Guerrillapreneurs operating in the sharing and gig economy want to change that way of thinking. Charles Fishman, in his book, The Walmart Effect, says, we consumers used to buy a small quart of elastic pickles for $2.49. Now we're buying gallon-sized jars, and we just simply throw out all the pickles we don't eat. The Walmart effect made it so that we could get a gallon-sized jar of pickles for the same price as the quart, even though we have no intention of consuming the additional pickles. If we drill down further, we find that in 1982, the average cost of a floor model television ranged between $1,000 and $1,400, 6% of a person's annual salary in 1982. By the year 2000, the average floor model dropped below $600, or 1% of an individual's annual salary. And by 2008, a 30-inch TV had dropped below $200. At that point, the TV became disposable. And according to the EPA in 2008, 1.84 million tons of televisions and computer products were dumped in landfills. So as the cost of the items that we use in our homes have dropped, the e-waste, the electronic waste in our landfills, have increased. And unfortunately, that waste is also toxic. According to the EPA, 50 million cell phones are replaced worldwide each month, and only 10% are recycled. One cell phone has enough toxins, arsenic, mercury, and lead to contaminate 40,000 gallons of water. And we are contaminating an estimated 22 trillion gallons of water per year. So there is a burning platform for reuse to protect the environment, but there's also an opportunity to turn those byproducts into profit. And cell phones are not the only market segment where this opportunity exists. Let's talk a little bit about aluminum cans. The Container Recycling Institute estimates that 36 billion aluminum cans are in landfills and scrap yards, and the value of those cans is $600 million. That value has probably gone up in the last couple of years as aluminum has reached 55 cents a pound. Using aluminum cans and recycling them to produce new cans cuts air pollution down by 95%. Shouldn't Coke and Pepsi want that $600 million that's locked somewhere in landfills around the country? Shouldn't they also want to reduce the pollution that's in our air by using those cans and cutting the cost it takes to manufacture new cans by 90%? Isn't that a guerrillapreneur, GuerrillaGreen win-win for the environment and for your bottom line if you figure out how to create a closed-loop system that returns cans back to the people who made them as part of their product? I'm not stopping there. Let's talk about the automobile. 10 to 11 million cars are taken out of service each year. Now, here's what's fantastic. 94% of those automobiles are returned for recycling, and as much as 75% of what's on that vehicle is used or repurposed in the manufacture of future cars. Now, that's a great story that didn't just happen up on the automotive industry. It is derived from the roots of the original manufacturers, like Henry Ford. For my coffee drinkers, let's talk a little bit about those chains like Starbucks and Dunkin's. In 2005, 4 billion coffee cups were put in landfills because they were not recyclable. So every time you had that double mocha chocolate Oreo venti coffee, you were putting another cup in the landfill. And there's no reason it has to be that way. Oh, I'm not done. We're moving on to the poultry industry now. 8.5 billion chickens were processed this year. When processed, the chickens leave behind 3 billion pounds of feathers that go into landfills. Now, feathers can be recycled and used in some startling new products that we'll talk about here in this podcast. How many of you drink bottled water? Like me, walking around thinking I'm cute with a smart water bottle and jogging around the neighborhood with it to let people know I love to exercise. 1,500 plastic water bottles are consumed every second in the United States, and there's no concerted effort to make the water bottle, those plastic water bottles, part of a manufacturing ecosystem where they're encouraged to be recycled. What if all the businesses that participated in the industries that I just highlighted were GuerrillaGreen? GuerrillaGreen in the sense that they use the byproduct or the waste from their primary product and created a new revenue stream by recycling or coming up with new uses for that waste. What would a company look like that did that? Well, let's start first with cars, since we've had a lot of success with recycling. Henry Ford, when he launched the company and started with the mass production using an assembly line of the Model T, produced a lot of wood scrap. A lot of wood scrap that was soaked in chemicals that were part of the production process, be it either painting it or preparing it for installation on the assembly line. Instead of discarding the scrap, Henry Ford took that scrap, processed it to remove the chemicals so that those could be reused or resold, and then took the scrap wood and converted it into briquettes and sold that as charcoal. The brand Kingsford is the charcoal brand that was the effort of that circular loop process that Ford initiated. Using scrap from the assembly line. That effort was not only good in terms of reducing the amount of scrap put into landfills, but it generated incremental income that allowed Ford to increase the wages of the men on the assembly line. What else did Ford as a company do that's linked to this heritage? They were one of the companies that were the first to recycle bumpers. To take bumpers off cars in scrap yards and reuse them on new cars coming off the assembly line. Again, saving millions of dollars from not having to extract raw materials from the ground, process, and make new parts. They took the parts that were already there and used them as part of the manufacturing process. GuerrillaGreen. That's what I mean. Henry Ford built an entirely separate business from the waste of his primary business. The assembly line for the Model T produced wood waste. So Henry Ford took back the chemicals that were soaked into that wood, resold that, and created this great Kingsford brand that we still enjoy today. And some of you are still throwing your garbage away. Guerrillapreneurs don't do that. Do you think you'd have more money to invest in disruptive slingshot technology if you were finding new revenue streams for your waste? I say yes. What if every industry took this focus? What if every executive thought like Henry Ford and said, absolutely no waste, find a way to make money off of it? For example, what if Henry Ford were the CEO of Coca-Cola when it was founded? Do you think he would have taken the same principle and figured out a way to encourage people to recycle bottles and cans using the network that Coke has to deliver those same products when they are initially sent to the store shelves? I think Henry Ford would have changed the way Coca-Cola does business today. I think he could have not only done that and made a profit, but also created ancillary businesses as part of that process, as he did with Kingsford. What's one way that he could have done that? Well, what about those vending machines? That's the perfect network for encouraging recycling. What if the vending machines accepted aluminum cans as payment? Slide the cans in, the system assesses whether or not it truly is an aluminum can. It crushes it, inserts it into a storage bin, and assigns a value to that aluminum based on current market rates. And here's where it could get really cool. In order for you to recycle using that sort of system, Coke could require you to set up a banking account in a banking institution that they own, so that when you put a can in the machine to be crushed and to be processed, the digital funds are put into your Coke bank account. Those digital funds could be used at any time at any vending machine to buy a Coke. Of course, when you're done consuming that Coke, you turn right back around and put it in that vending machine to get your digital credit. Now, how cool is that? What would that do for Coke? It would start turning them into a financial services company. Yes, imagine millions of people recycling every day, dropping digital funds into their Coke account, and then withdrawing them when they want to purchase a Coke at any vending machine by putting their thumb or their ID in the machine to access those funds. Coke would be a financial powerhouse with more data on individuals than probably Google. You see, that's how guerrillapreneurs turn waste into bazing. Yes, opportunity. So Coke has that opportunity to create a huge recycling infrastructure, a circular loop that could have opened the doors to more sophisticated business operations that brings their consumers closer to them. Imagine a database with millions of your customers who are bringing your product back to you and helping you drive down your operating costs, and then sharing more personal information about themselves in order to get a banking account that they can use at any of your vending machines. That's more than just putting in energy efficient light bulbs. Like Apple, you would have created an ecosystem that generates profits and produces ancillary benefits that include the environment. I know some of you are saying, Mark, this is just fantasy. This could never happen. But Ben Cotworth wrote in 2010, June 30th, 2010, in an article entitled, "Reverse Vending Machines Give Users Cash for Their Empties." Wincord Nixdorf, a South Australia company, produces a machine called reverse vending machines, or RVMs, that take recyclable bottles and cans and gives out cash. And here's how it works. Consumers put their metals or bottles into the RVMs. The RVM's internal cameras identify the product and determine if they're acceptable. If they're acceptable, the RVM crushes and compacts and sorts the bottles and cans and puts them into a storage bin that is picked up and taken to a recycling depot. The consumer is given a barcode receipt in the amount of 10 cents for each unit deposited, and they can take that receipt to a cash machine and get actual money. So the concept is there. Coke would have to take on the additional mindset of seeing the closed-looped value of having every consumer return their aluminum and their competitors back into their system, creating new businesses and new opportunities. But Coke sees themselves as purely a Coke, a beverage company, and they don't see their responsibility as 100% recycling and giving something back to the consumer. If they did, they'd have 4 or 5 different businesses right now, just like Henry Ford did. Can other businesses do this? Yes. What if Ford had run Staples, the office supply company? There are so many different ways that that company could encourage recycling. Ink cartridges are one that many of you are aware of, and Staples was one of the early innovators as it relates to recharging old cartridges and putting them back on the shelves with the Staples brand. So if you have a Hewlett-Packard or any sort of other printer, you would see stapled private label brands for those devices at a cheaper price than was manufactured by the original manufacturer. Sometimes 50% less than the brand name manufacturer. In 2005, Staples estimated that it generated an incremental $280 million in revenue from the remanufacturing and recharging of those ink cartridges. So you can see if you walk around that Staples aisle, there are so many different ways that they could recycle. Computers, printers, screens, and you just go down each aisle and there's at least 5 or 6 items that could be recycled through Staples to drive down their operating costs, to give them the opportunity for private label products, and for give them the chance to sell on your behalf these products back into the production flow and reduce pollution. So storefronts like that, if Ford had run them, could he have taken his same philosophy and applied it there? I think so. Now, one of the favorite restaurants that I like to eat at, Ted's Montana Grill. I wanted to bring them in because people will say, well, Mark, what can restaurants do that they aren't already doing? Like recycling their grease, putting in fluorescent lighting, cutting back on the types of plastics that aren't recyclable in the restaurant. Well, I like Ted's Montana Grill because not only does he own the restaurant, but Ted Turner also owns the largest private herd of bison in the world, with 51,000 head of bison. And what could he do to drive down more of his cost? Well, first, maybe he could use some of those buffalo or bison chips as fuel. Yeah, animal manure. He could use that manure in a biodigester, and with the 50,000 heads, could generate about a $5 million annual savings by using the waste from the animals to create electricity. Not a bad process. The scrap that's left over from the creation of the bison meat, Turner could possibly use that to create his own line of beef jerky. And he could use the restaurants as one of his primary distribution channels for this bison jerky. The hides from the animals could be used for all sorts of personal wear as well as accessories, handbags, wallets. So when you start to break down every piece of waste or scrap that may be part of his process, there are 3, 4, 5 opportunities for generating incremental income that could be reinvested into the business and reducing the footprint, the waste footprint associated with delivering value through his restaurant. We've talked about Apple's ecosystem, the iTunes and App Store. For our consumers, prior to Apple, no one had created a system so tightly linked that brought so much value. But for a long time, Apple had not taken full advantage of figuring out how to recycle old iPhones. And then a market popped up with smaller players who started buying, repairing, and reselling those iPhones in developing markets. Had Apple jumped on that process from day one, it's estimated that they could have cut their operating expenses by as much as 5% and generated anywhere from $20 to $30 million in incremental revenue by repurposing and reselling older model iPhones into developing markets. But Apple has made up for those early days. Today they recycle an estimated 1.2 million phones a year. They separate the gold and copper from the camera and extract silver and platinum from the main logic board. According to The Verge, Apple's first of two recycling robots was named Liam. Liam was retired, and parts of Liam were recycled and used in its new recycling robot called Daisy. Daisy can recycle up to 9 different models of iPhones and can process over 200 phones per hour. Apple got a slow start, but they are now truly GuerrillaGreen. Okay, I picked on Starbucks earlier, and here's why. According to a June 16, 2016 CNN report, over 60 billion paper cups find their way into landfills every year. You see, here's the problem. Starbucks cups are made from a cardboard with a thin layer of plastic tightly attached to the cup. This keeps the drink warm and prevents the cardboard from getting all mushy from that hot coffee. But it takes 20 years for that cup to decompose. According to that CNN report, Starbucks signed a pledge in 2016 agreeing to increase the amount of recyclable goods in all of their stores. They even went so far as to test a product produced by the UK company Frugal Pack, where the plastic inside of those cardboard cups are not so tightly bound, which allows them to be stripped apart and to have the cardboard recycled up to 7 times. Now, I think that's a pretty good solution. They tested that in the UK, and they're still working on rolling that solution out. But I have a more exciting solution. What if Starbucks had edible cups? Edible cups. There's a New York-based firm called The Way We See the World, and they have produced a line of edible cups that can also hold hot liquids, and they call it Jellowware. The Jellowware is made from a agar gelatin that is derived from algae that is the main ingredient in most desserts. They can produce it in flavors that are complementary to your coffee. Imagine a cup that made your coffee taste like pumpkin spice or cinnamon or chocolate. And here's the cool thing. After you've consumed your coffee, you can turn around and eat the cup. That's the ultimate in recycling. That's Lion King's circle of life recycling. And I bet they could get a premium on top of what they already charge for a cup of coffee when you know you can eat the cup. And not to mention the benefit to product innovation when you add this level of uniqueness to your offering. That's what I think Henry Ford would probably do if he ran Starbucks. Now let's talk about processing chickens. Yeah, chickens. Chickens generate 3 billion pounds of feathers to the landfill each year. What if I told you those same feathers could be used to make computer chips, and that the feathers themselves transmit electricity faster than the silicon-based chips that are used today? Chicken feathers are made from the protein keratin, which is strong, light, hollow, and very dense, which makes it capable of withstanding mechanical and thermal stresses. As a result of this, research scientist Pam Hersey believes that not only can chicken feather chips be produced, They can be disposed of easier than silicon-based chips. Not to mention because of its diametric constant. You see, air has a diametric constant of 1.0, and silicon has a diametric constant that ranges between 3.8 and 4.2. Keratin fibers, those fibers that make up chicken feathers, have a dielectric constant of 1.6. That means electrons can move through the feather-based chips twice as fast as the silicon-based chips. Now, the dielectric constant of chicken feathers also has Richard Wohl excited. He's the director of affordable composites from renewable sources at the University of Delaware. That dielectric constant of chicken feathers has him thinking we can use them to make circuit boards. Yes, strong, light, dense, can handle thermal and mechanical stresses would make them the perfect material to make circuit boards and make circuit boards a lot easier to dispose of, just as they would if they were made into chips, with the added benefit of being able to process electrons twice as fast as the current traditional motherboards. Guys, I'm not done with chicken feathers yet. Did you know you can use chicken feathers and make them into notebook paper? Or just take it and replace pulp? The USDA estimates that a year's worth of chicken feathers could replace 25% of the wood pulp needed to make diapers. And now that I'm getting close to the age where I will need adult diapers, I really care about this. No, but seriously, the real question is, why hasn't Tyson Industry capitalized on this and become a multi-industry juggernaut the way Ford did with wood and wood pulp in making briquettes? When you're GuerrillaGreen, your waste becomes a product. Oh, I'm not done yet with chicken feathers. I'm not going to stop until I can use Elon Musk's name in this podcast and relate it to chicken feathers. But before we do that, I want to let you know that chicken feathers can be used to make biodegradable cups. Yes. If Starbucks didn't like the idea of using edible cups, they can continue to use plastic cups made from chicken feathers. In an April 5th, 2011 article in phys.org by Catherine Gammon entitled "A New Process Turns Waste Chicken Feathers into Biodegradable Plastic," she cites the work of a researcher at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln named Yiqi Lang. Now, Lang took the chicken feathers and pulverized them into a powder, added chemicals that made the keratin molecules join together and form long chains in a process they called polymerization, and the new plastic is strong, durable, water-resistant, and can be used for plastic cups, plates, and even furniture. So 3 billion pounds of feathers no longer need to go into landfills and can generate a lot of extra money for companies like Tyson Industries. Okay, everyone, click your heels together 3 times and say this along with me. There's nobody like Elon Musk. There's nobody like Elon Musk. There's nobody like Elon Musk. Now, maybe if he hears this, he will check in on this podcast and join the chicken feather fever, because chicken feathers can be used to create hydrogen fuel cells. Yeah. According to Brian Nelson, in a 2009 article in cleantechnia.com, you can use chicken feathers to make hydrogen fuel tanks. And that these chicken feather produced hydrogen tanks are more cost effective than the carbon nanotubes or the metal hydrides. For instance, Nelson cites that if you were to add a carbon nanotube hydrogen fuel tank to a car, it would increase the cost by $5.5 million. Or if you use the metal hydride nanotubes, it may add an additional $30,000 to the cost of a vehicle. However, a chicken feather hydrogen fuel tank would only add $200 additional to the cost of a car. The chicken feathers, when carbonized, could be used as a highly effective hydrogen storage device. The keratin feathers are hollow, like a hollow tube, and when heated, they formed a cross-link that strengthens the structure that allows it to absorb just as much hydrogen as the carbon nanotubes. Why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we implementing these common sense solutions that give us everything we want in life and protect the planet at the same time? That's why we got to keep clicking our heels and asking Elon Musk to help us bring common sense to high places. Guys, I've enjoyed this episode, the 30th episode of GuerrillaPreneur, the Art of Waging Small Business Warfare podcast. I appreciate you coming along on the ride with me, and I'm certainly looking forward to the next 30 episodes. As I said in my opening monologue, the next 30 will be lit, and I want you to be a part of the tribe. Please share the show, like the show, leave comments on the show, and if so compelled, go over to patreon.com/GuerrillaPreneur and support the show. GuerrillaPreneurs, join us on December the 8th, 2018 in Selma, Alabama for the 5th annual Selma Business Pitch Contest. We're going to eventually bring a Fab Lab to Selma, Alabama, where young guerrillapreneurs can build the next Google, Amazon, Microsoft, or Apple computer. We need your help, but if you have an idea, a business plan, or just an entrepreneur, come pitch at our pitch contest. Follow us on Facebook at Selma Business Pitch Contest. We'd love to see you there. Guerrillapreneurs, Scott Sullivan said it best in episode 7. Be a mace, sharpen those spikes. And if you're not breaking something, your company might be the first thing broken.
Thank you for listening to the Guerrillapreneur, the Art of Waging Small Business Warfare podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, you may also enjoy the book Guerrillapreneur, Small Business Strategy for Davids Wanting to Defeat Goliaths, available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and iTunes. Follow Mark Peterson on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Guerrillapreneur. Now I want to close with a quote from the great Chinese military strategist Sun Tzu. Victorious warriors win first and then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first, then seek to win. Keep fighting, guerrillapreneurs.